The betrayal. The rain was deafening as it hammered against the metal roof of the warehouse. I was slumped against a cold, rusted concrete pillar, my hand pressed hard against my left side. But I couldn't stop the blood from leaking through my fingers. It was cold. So incredibly cold. Every breath felt like inhaling liquid fire, the damp air of the docks mixing with the metallic taste rising in my throat. A few feet away from my failing grip, my phone screen was glowing against the dirty floorboards. On it, a live broadcast showed the man I had given everything to. Ethan. He was standing on a lavishly decorated stage, wearing a flawless white silk tuxedo, smiling brightly as he kissed a wealthy tech heiress. The crowd was cheering for them, their applause muffled through the tiny phone speaker. Then, the wedding broadcast abruptly cut out, replaced by a dark screen. His voice came through the speaker of my phone, completely flat, corporate, and emotionless. You really shouldn't have come back to the city, Ren. You did your job perfectly. You took the blame for my fraud charges. But you're a liability now. A broken tool. And tools get replaced. I coughed, a thick drop of copper filling my mouth and spilling past my lips. Ethan, I gave you 3 years. I ran your entire empire from the shadows. I gave you my life's work, my AI patents. And I thank you for your charity. I really do. Ethan replied smoothly, his tone conversational, as if he were discussing a minor stock adjustment. But her father gives me international logistics expansion. You give me a prison sentence if the prosecutors ever decide to question you again. Goodbye, Ren. Don't worry, the media will call it a tragic robbery. The line went dead with a hollow beep. From the deep shadows of the warehouse, 2 of Ethan's contracted men stepped forward, their faces hidden behind ballistic masks, raising their weapons directly at my chest. I closed my eyes as the twin gunshots echoed through the rafters. In that final second, as the lead tore through me, my heartbreak turned into a pure, suffocating hatred. If I get another life, Ethan, if the universe gives me even a single second chance, I will tear your world down to the absolute bedrock. I sat up with a violent, desperate gasp, clutching my chest. I was drenched in a cold sweat, my heart hammering violently against my ribs like a trapped bird. I frantically ripped open my shirt, my palms searching my skin. No blood, no entry wounds, no agonizing, tearing pain. I looked around the room, stunned. I wasn't in a dark warehouse. I was sitting in my old luxury penthouse on the Upper East Side. I grabbed the sleek smartphone charging on my nightstand, my thumb shaking erratically as I unlocked the screen. The date widget read, June 14th, 2024. 3 years in the past. My heart pounded against my ribs as I realized what night it was. Tonight was the annual Vance Global Corporate Gala. In my past life, this was the exact night Ethan kneeled before me on the balcony, slid a gold-plated promise ring onto my finger, and begged me to sign over my independent AI core patents to his family company to protect our future from corporate raiders. I had blindly believed his tears. I had kissed him, smiled, and handed him his entire empire on a silver platter. A dark, ruthless smile spread across my face as I stood up, my legs fully steady now. He thought I was still his loyal, trusting dog. He had absolutely no idea the board had been flipped, and the game had already changed. That night, I walked into the grand ballroom of the hotel wearing a custom midnight black tuxedo with a sharp crimson silk pocket square. I didn't hide in the dim corners or blend into the background like Ethan always ordered me to do. I held my head high, walking straight through the center of the floor, turning every wealthy head in the room. Ethan immediately cut through the crowd, holding 2 glasses of expensive champagne and wearing that familiar, deceptive, boyish smile. Ren, there you are. Why are you dressed like that? I thought we explicitly agreed you'd wear something low-key to avoid the board members. Never mind. Let's slip away to the 3rd floor. The corporate lawyers are waiting with the patent transfer papers. Let's secure our future. I looked him dead in the eye, my gaze cold enough to freeze water. Our future, Ethan? Or your father's failing portfolio? Ethan blinked, his practiced smile freezing on his face. What? Ren, what on earth are you talking about? Without a word, I walked straight past him, deliberately and heavily slamming my shoulder into his. The sudden force caused him to stumble back a step, the champagne sloshing violently out of his glass and soaking his expensive white silk sleeve. Ren, what the hell is wrong with you? Ethan hissed sharply under his breath, his face twisting in sudden rage as he dabbing at his arm. I didn't bother looking back at him. I walked straight toward the elevated VIP lounge at the back of the hall, which was heavily guarded by private security personnel. Sitting inside on a black leather chair was Julian Vance, the city's most feared underground tycoon, the head of Vance Global and Ethan's deadliest corporate rival. He looked thoroughly bored, slowly swirling a glass of dark whiskey, radiating an aura of pure, unadulterated danger. The lead guard immediately stepped into my path, placing a heavy hand on his belt. "Private lounge, kid. Back off right now." I didn't stop. I spoke loudly, making sure my clear voice carried straight past the guard and directly to the man in the chair. "Tell Mr. Vance that his senior vice president is currently leaking his next-generation maritime shipping blueprints to the black market." Julian's hand paused midair. The clinking of the ice cubes stopped. He slowly lowered his glass, his sharp, amber eyes locking onto me with intense, lethal focus. "Let him through," Julian commanded, his deep baritone cutting through the room. A few minutes later, Julian trapped me against the heavy stone railing of the secluded rooftop terrace. He was towering, his massive, broad frame completely cutting off my escape against the moonlight, blocking out the warmth of the hotel behind us. "You've got a lot of nerve," Julian growled, stepping deeply into my personal space until I could smell the rich whiskey on his breath. A junior analyst from a rival firm walks into my private lounge, drops a massive conspiracy theory, and expects me to just trust him? Why shouldn't I have my men throw you off this roof right now? I didn't flinch. I didn't back down an inch. Instead, I stepped even closer to him, reaching my hands up to slowly, deliberately adjust the collar of his sharp suit jacket, fixing a minor wrinkle with calm precision. "Because I don't care about your trust, Mr. Vance. I care about results. In exactly 6 months, Ethan's family will use that leaked blueprint data to frame your cargo shipping lines for international smuggling, freezing your assets and forcing a hostile boardroom buyout." Julian's amber eyes narrowed into dangerous, razor-thin slits. He reached down with a lightning-fast reflex, his large, calloused hand firmly gripping my wrist, stopping my movements. "You're talking about a multi-billion-dollar war. Why should I believe a single word from a stranger? Because at exactly midnight tonight, less than 2 minutes from now, a dummy corporation owned by Ethan's father is going to launch an automated short sell attack on your subsidiary logistics stocks to test your financial firewalls before the real hit. Check your tablet, Mr. Vance. If I'm right, you give me 30% of your tech division, your complete legal backing, and your personal muscle. In exchange, I give you the absolute roadmap to completely destroy Ethan." A sharp, high-frequency digital chime suddenly rang from Julian's inner jacket pocket. He kept his heavy grip locked tightly around my wrist, but used his free hand to pull out a sleek, secure electronic tablet. His eyes scanned the screen as the steady green lines suddenly fractured, plunging vertically into a violent, bleeding red. The clock on the screen clicked over, 12 a.m. Julian stared at the red graphs for a long, silent moment, then slowly looked up at me. The icy suspicion in his eyes melted into a dark, deeply intrigued, possessive amusement. A slow, dangerous smirk spread across his face. "Well, I'll be damned," Julian whispered, leaning down further until his lips almost brushed the edge of my ear, his voice dropping to a gravelly purr. "You're a vicious little creature, aren't you, Ren? Fine. We have a contract. I'll provide the raw power. You provide the strategy. But let's get one thing perfectly straight. If you are using me, or if you ever try to double-cross me, I won't just ruin you. I will personally make sure you disappear from this earth so completely that not even a memory remains." I looked straight into his dark eyes, my silver hair blowing in the cool night wind, a triumphant smile on my lips. "Understood, partner. Now, let's go ruin my ex." By the next morning, the corporate world was in a state of absolute chaos. The short sell attack that Ethan's father had initiated had been completely reversed. Using the protocols I provided, Julian's security team hadn't just blocked the breach. They had traced the ghost accounts directly back to a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands under Ethan's father's name. I sat in the high-backed leather chair across from Julian in his private executive office on the 80th floor of the Vance Tower. The room was modern, glass-walled, and overlooked the entire financial district. Julian was reviewing the legal documents our lawyers had drawn up overnight. The tracing data is flawless, Julian said, throwing the tablet onto the desk. He leaned back, crossing his arms, his eyes studying me like a riddle he hadn't fully solved yet. By noon, the federal regulators will be launching an official inquiry into Ethan's family firm for market manipulation. You didn't just defend my stock, Ren. You put a noose around their necks. This is just the bait, I replied calmly, sipping my black coffee. Ethan's father is arrogant. He thinks he can bribe his way out of a regulatory audit. He'll try to shift the blame to a mid-level manager. But what he doesn't know is that I already copied the primary database from their main server before I left their offices yesterday. Julian raised an eyebrow, a dark glint appearing in his eyes. You moved that fast? When did you even access their mainframe? While Ethan was busy trying to find a napkin to clean the champagne off his sleeve at the gala, I smirked, leaning forward. I used his personal biometric bypass code. I know his security patterns better than he does. Right now, that database contains the exact transaction logs for their illegal black market tech smuggling. If we leak that to the press at the exact moment the regulators step through his door, the megatech stock will collapse completely. Julian let out a low, rumbling laugh that vibrated through the room. He stood up, walking around the massive desk until he stood directly behind my chair. He leaned down, placing his large hands on the armrests, effectively trapping me in place once again. You're terrifying, do you know that? Julian murmured, his voice dropping an octave, his face inches from mine. You look so fragile with that silver hair and that calm face, but inside, you're pure poison. I'm almost glad I'm the one holding your leash. I tilted my head back, looking up into his amber eyes without a single trace of submission. Don't confuse an alliance with a leash, Mr. Vance. I'm here for revenge. But if you play your cards right, you might just get to keep me when this is over. Julian's smirk widened, his eyes darkening with a mixture of respect and intense attraction. Is that a promise, Ren? It's a business proposal, I whispered back. Now, send the file to the media. Let's watch Ethan watch his world burn. The media explosion was immediate. Headlines flashed across every financial network, exposing the dark underbelly of the megatech empire. News anchors detailed the exact routing numbers used to launder money through offshore accounts, accompanied by leaked videos of their black market tech deals. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID read Ethan. I let it ring for 3 slow beats before picking up, leaning back against the sleek glass wall of Julian's penthouse apartment. Ren, what the hell did you do? Ethan screamed through the line, his usual composed demeanor completely shattered. I could hear papers rustling frantically and voices yelling in the background of his office. The feds are downstairs, the board is panicking, and our stock is down 40%. Did you leak those files? I don't know what you're talking about, Ethan, I said, my voice smooth, casual, and dripping with mock innocence. I thought you said I was just a low-level analyst. How could a simple tool like me manage to pull off something so complex? Don't play dumb with me, he snarled, his voice breaking under the weight of utter panic. You're the only one who had the security encryption codes to that database. Fix this, Ren. Call your press contacts. Tell them it was a fabricated hoax, or I swear to God, I'll make sure you never work in this town again. You still don't get it, do you? I whispered, my voice dropping its playful edge, turning as cold and razor-sharp as ice. I don't want to work in your town, Ethan. I want to build a new one over your ashes. You told me last night that when a tool is broken, you discard it. Well, look at your company right now. It's completely broken. Let's see who discards who. Run, wait, please. Ethan begged, his arrogant rage instantly evaporating into pure desperation. We can talk about this. I'll give you whatever you want. The patents, the equity. We can be partners again. Too late, I said flatly, and pressed the end call button. From across the room, Julian was leaning against a marble counter, watching me with a look of pure, predatory satisfaction. He raised his glass of whiskey toward me in a silent toast. You didn't just break him, Julian murmured, a slow, dark smile spreading across his lips as he walked over to me. You completely emptied his clip before he even knew he was in a fight. I like a man who doesn't hesitate to pull the trigger. The fight has barely started, I replied, looking out the massive window at the city below. Ethan is the type of rat who bites when he's cornered. He'll turn to his father's old underground connections to try and remove me permanently. He did it once before. Julian stepped closer, his heavy hand coming up to gently grasp the back of my neck, his thumb caressing my jawline with a possessive firmness. His amber eyes locked onto mine, burning with a dangerous warmth. Let him try. My men control the streets of this city. Run. He touches a single silver hair on your head, and I won't just ruin his business. I'll make sure he never sees the light of day again. You belong to this alliance now, and I take care of what's mine. I didn't pull away from his touch. Instead, I leaned slightly into it, my eyes meeting his with an unyielding intensity. Then let's get ready for his next move, partner. The night air was thick and humid as the elevator descended to the subterranean parking garage of Vance Tower. Julian had been called into an unexpected, late-night emergency board meeting on the top floor, but he had insisted I wait for him in the security lounge. I didn't listen. I needed some air, and more importantly, I wanted to check the secondary encrypted laptop I had hidden in the trunk of my car. The garage was unervingly silent, the only sound being the distant hum of the ventilation shafts and the rhythmic click of my dress shoes against the polished concrete. Suddenly, a sharp squeal of tires echoed from the lower ramp. A blacked-out SUV accelerated around the corner, its headlights completely off, aiming straight for my position. My reflexes, sharpened by the terrors of my past life, kicked in instantly. I lunged to the side, throwing my body over the hood of a parked sedan just as the SUV slammed into the concrete pillar where I had been standing a split second before. The metal twisted with a deafening crunch. Before I could scramble to my feet, the doors of the SUV flew open. 3 men in heavy tactical gear and balaclavas stepped out, their silenced firearms drawn. Get him in the back. Boss wants him alive. But he didn't say anything about keeping his legs unbroken, one of them barked. I tried to back away, my heart hammering violently against my ribs. My back hit the cold side of the sedan. I was cornered. One of the men lunged forward, grabbing my jacket collar and dragging me off the hood. I slammed my elbow directly into his nose, hearing a satisfying crack, but the other 2 immediately swarmed me, pinning my arms back and slamming me face first against the concrete floor. Vicious little bastard, aren't you? The injured one hissed, wiping blood from his mask as he raised a heavy, iron-weighted baton. Let's see how much you talk after this. I braced myself, closing my eyes, waiting for the impact. Bang! A deafening, unsilenced gunshot echoed through the cavernous garage, shattering the rear window of the SUV. The man holding the baton dropped instantly, clutching a clean bullet wound in his shoulder. I believe I explicitly stated that anyone who touches him dies. A deep, icy baritone rumbled from the darkness of the elevator bay. Julian walked into the dim fluorescent light. He had discarded his suit jacket, his white dress shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing thick, scarred forearms. In his right hand, he held a massive, matte black Desert Eagle pistol, its barrel smoking. Behind him, a dozen heavily armed Vance security operators flooded the garage like ghosts. The remaining 2 mercenaries didn't even have time to raise their weapons. Within seconds, Julian's men had them pinned to the floor, disarmed, and stripped of their masks. Julian didn't look at the mercenaries. His amber eyes were fixed entirely on me. He strode over, his face a mask of absolute, terrifying fury, and aggressively yanked me up by my waist, holding me tightly against his chest. His large hands frantically checked my neck, my face, and my torso for injuries. Are you hurt? Speak to me, Ren. Julian growled, his voice trembling with a mixture of raw rage and a strange, desperate panic. I'm fine, Julian. I'm intact. I breathed out, my hands naturally gripping his broad shoulders to steady myself. He let out a harsh, ragged breath, his grip tightening around my waist until it was almost painful. He leaned down, burying his face into the crook of my neck for a brief, heavy second, inhaling sharply. When he pulled back, his eyes were burning with a dark, possessive fire. You fool. I told you to stay in the lounge, he whispered harshly, his thumb pressing hard against my lower lip. If anything happened to you. He broke off, turning his lethal gaze toward the 2 mercenaries groaning on the floor. He walked over, casually stepping on the hand of the leader until the bones popped. Who sent you? Julian asked, his voice dead and emotionless. Choose your next words very carefully. Your life depends on them." The mercenary screamed in agony, gasping for air. "Ethan." It was Ethan Megatech. "He paid us to bring the silver-haired kid to the old docks. He's panicking. He's losing everything." Julian slowly looked back at me, a dark, terrible smirk pulling at the corners of his lips. "Well, partner, it seems your ex has officially run out of options. Shall we go pay him a final visit?" I adjusted my torn cuffs, my eyes flashing with a cold, triumphant vengeance. "Let's go finish this, Julian. Bring the gasoline." The drive to the docks was completely silent, the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that precedes a massive storm. Outside the tinted windows of Julian's armored SUV, the rain began to fall once again, thick and relentless, blurring the neon city lights into streaks of bleeding color. I stared out at the water, my reflection in the glass looking entirely different than it had 3 years ago in that abandoned warehouse. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the architect. Julian sat right beside me, his massive frame absolute, his jaw clenched so tightly the muscles jumped beneath his skin. He hadn't let go of my left hand since we left the parking garage. His grip was tight, bordering on possessive, his thumb rhythmically rubbing circles into the back of my palm. "If you don't want to step inside, you don't have to," Julian said, his deep baritone cutting through the dark. "My men can handle the cleanup. You've already won, Ren." I turned my head, meeting his intense amber gaze. "No, I need to look him in the eye when his world collapses. I died there once, Julian. I need to make sure the ghost is finally buried." Julian's eyes darkened with a mixture of profound respect and an intense, burning attraction. He squeezed my hand harder. "Then I'll be right behind you, every step of the way." The SUV pulled to a halt inside the massive, cavernous entryway of the very same warehouse from my past life. The rain hammered violently against the corrugated tin roof, creating a deafening rhythm that made my blood run hot with adrenaline. Julian's security team moved in like shadows, securing the perimeters within seconds. In the center of the damp concrete floor, tied securely to a heavy metal chair under a single, flickering halogen bulb, was Ethan. His expensive white suit jacket was gone. His blonde hair was wildly disheveled, matted with sweat and rain, and a dark purple bruise was already forming along his jawline where Julian's men had subdued him. The moment our footsteps echoed through the empty space, Ethan's head snapped up. When his eyes landed on me, his expression twisted into a manic, desperate mix of rage and absolute terror. "Run! Ren, thank God!" Ethan screamed, his voice cracking, straining violently against the thick ropes binding his wrists. "You have to tell these monsters to let me go. My father has millions in offshore accounts. We can split it. 50-50. Just get me away from Vance." I walked forward slowly, my hands casually tucked into the pockets of my pristine black trousers. I stopped just 3 feet away from him, looking down at his pathetic, trembling frame. The utter lack of fear on my face seemed to terrify him more than any weapon could. 50-50, Ethan?" I asked, my voice deadly calm, tilting my head slightly. "Just yesterday, you told me I was a broken tool. You told me that when a tool is broken, it gets discarded. Why would a king share his kingdom with a piece of trash?" Ethan's eyes widened to the size of saucers. How? How do you know I said that? I only told you that on the phone, after the feds came." He cut himself off, his mind completely fracturing as he tried to piece together reality. No, I didn't say that yet. Who are you?" Julian stepped out of the shadows, his towering presence casting a massive, terrifying shadow directly over Ethan. He placed a heavy, commanding hand on my shoulder, his fingers digging in slightly, a silent reminder to Ethan exactly who I belong to now. "He is the man who completely dismantled your pathetic family name in less than 24 hours, Julian growled, his voice vibrating with absolute malice. "And you are the dead man who dared to touch what is mine." "Vance, please." Ethan sobbed, tears finally spilling down his hollow cheeks as he looked up at the tycoon. "It was just business. He's just an analyst. Why do you care about him so much?" Julian smiled, a slow, predatory, terrifying smirk. He leaned down slightly, his gaze locking onto Ethan with the cold indifference of a god looking at an insect. "Because while you were busy treating a diamond like a common stone, I recognized his value. He gave me the strategy to conquer this city. And in return, I am giving him your head." Julian nodded toward his lead operator. Within seconds, a heavy iron container of industrial gasoline was brought forward. The operator unscrewed the cap and slowly, methodically began pouring the pungent liquid over the crates and files surrounding Ethan's chair. "No, no, no, no. Stop. Please," Ethan shrieked, thrashing wildly, the metal legs of his chair scraping horribly against the concrete. "Run, please. Think about everything we had. I loved you. I swear I loved you. You loved the power I gave you," I said flatly, my voice entirely devoid of emotion. I pulled my hands out of my pockets, walking right up to him. I leaned down, whispering directly into his ear, mirroring the exact coldness he had shown me in the dark. "Goodbye, Ethan. Don't worry. The media will call it a tragic industrial accident." I stood up straight and turned my back on him, walking away without a single trace of regret. Julian walked right beside me, his arm wrapping firmly around my waist to guide me out into the cool night air. As we reached the threshold of the warehouse, Julian casually pulled a sleek, silver Zippo lighter from his pocket. He flicked it open, the small orange flame dancing in the darkness, illuminating the sharp lines of his handsome face. He looked at me, an unuttered question in his amber eyes. I reached out, my fingers wrapping around his hand, and together, we dropped the flame onto the trail of gasoline. The warehouse ignited in a spectacular, roaring wall of brilliant orange and red fire, the heat instantly warming the cold skin of my face. The screams from inside were quickly drowned out by the thunder and the deafening roar of the inferno. The past was officially dead. The ashes were all that remained. Julian pulled me tightly against his side, shielding me from the heat as we walked back toward the SUV. He stopped just before the door, turning me around so my back was against the vehicle, his massive body completely trapping me in his space. He looked down at me, his eyes burning brighter than the fire behind us. "It's over," Julian whispered, his large hand coming up to cup my cheek, his thumb gently wiping away a stray drop of rain from my temple. "The rat is gone. Your debt is paid. What happens now, partner?" I looked straight up into his dark, fiercely possessive eyes, a genuine, breathtaking smile finally breaking across my lips for the first time in 2 lifetimes. I reached up, my fingers tangling into the soft black hair at the back of his neck, pulling him down toward me. "Now," I breathed against his lips, "we build our own empire." Julian didn't hesitate. He leaned down, slamming his mouth onto mine in a deep, burning, intensely possessive kiss that tasted of rain, whiskey, and absolute victory. Epilogue, 6 months later. The winter air in the city was crisp and freezing, but inside the master penthouse of the Vance Tower, the floor-to-ceiling glass windows kept the cold at bay. The skyline below was a massive, glittering sea of neon lights. But tonight, the tallest skyscraper in the center of the financial district bore a brand-new, glowing logo, Vance Ren Enterprises. I stood by the window, swirling a glass of dark red wine, watching my reflection. My silver hair was neatly styled, and I wore a dark velvet smoking jacket. There were no more shadows hiding me, no more fear of the dark. The ghosts of my past life were entirely gone, burned to ash in that warehouse at the docks. A pair of strong, familiar arms wrapped firmly around my waist from behind. Julian leaned his chin against my shoulder, his broad chest pressed flush against my back, radiating a deep, comforting warmth. He inhaled deeply against my neck, his lips brushing the sensitive skin right beneath my ear. "You're staring out at the city like you want to conquer it all over again," Julian murmured, his deep baritone vibrating against my spine. "Relax, sweetheart. You already own it." I leaned back into his touch, letting my head rest against his shoulder. "I'm just making sure no one else is trying to play the game, Julian. Old habits die hard." Julian let out a low, rumbling laugh. He reached down, taking the wine glass from my fingers and setting it on a nearby marble table. Then, he turned me around in his arms so I was facing him. His amber eyes were dark, burning with that same fierce, possessive intensity that had drawn me to him on the rooftop 6 months ago. "Let them try," Julian said, his thumb caressing my jawline, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. "The Megatech Corporation is completely liquidated. Ethan's father is spending the rest of his life in a federal penitentiary. Anyone else in this city who even thinks about crossing us knows exactly what happens to our enemies. You've become quite defensive of our monopoly, Mr. Vance. I smirked, reaching up to play with the top buttons of his loosened white dress shirt. I am defensive of my partner, Julian corrected sharply, his grip tightening on my waist, pulling me so close there wasn't a single inch of space left between us. The city was just a bonus, Ren. You are the real prize. I told you before. I take care of what belongs to me. I don't belong to anyone, Julian. I teased softly, looking straight into his eyes with a challenge. Julian's smirk widened, a dangerous, breathless heat flaring in his eyes. He leaned down, his lips brushing against mine, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. Then let's call it a permanent merger. Because I'm never letting you go. He closed the distance, slamming his mouth onto mine in a deep, burning, deeply possessive kiss. It was a kiss that didn't taste of revenge or survival anymore. It tasted of power, luxury, and an unyielding, unbreakable love. We had rewritten the timeline. We had broken the cycle. And together, as the new kings of the city, we were completely untouchable.